Thank you very much for joining me, Glenn Parker, High Vibration Foundation. You are watching Glenn TV. Thank you very much for joining me. I have other YouTube channels. I have one for my production company, another one for entrepreneurial education. I was thinking to myself today, why not post the ones from the entrepreneurial education on this channel as well? Yay! So, going to be a different variety of topics, usually some kind of business education, social networking, building websites, how to build, how to be an open networker and build a large network of people, any and all kinds of things. So down below in the description, there are links to be able to get consultation sessions with me for education of all sorts, to be able to have one-on-one remote control sessions. And now go get some popcorn and something to drink and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. It is Glenn Parker, and today we're going to do a video on Wordfence security for WordPress. I've been tinkering around since I was 12 years old. I started programming, and at 16 I started teaching, and here 35 years later I am still teaching and love doing so. I do online remote control sessions for security, pay-per-click, SEO, and e-commerce, things like WooCommerce and WordPress in general. Many business owners and entrepreneurs that want to tweak their sites and or learn how to do everything from scratch, including pay-per-click and any kind of e-commerce. So, on with the show. WordPress. You know, Glenn, I have to enter a username and password when I get into WordPress, so what's the deal here? Why do I need any more security than that? And that is a very good question, boys and girls. I have live user data in my websites, live examples of my websites that I'm going to show you why it's really critical to have security on top of Wordfence. But first, I'm going to tell you I love WordPress, and I have been doing HTML encoding and web designing since the mid 90s, like 96, and SEO since 97, and selling on eBay since 97 thereon. And out of the box, the only flaw that I have a quarrel with WordPress is that it allows, and prepare yourself, boys and girls, it allows an unlimited amount of username and password attempts. Yes, I did say an unlimited amount of username and password attempts, boys and girls. So there's no mechanism in place to notify you when somebody's trying to or has attempted to log in and hasn't logged in. And that's why Wordfence and others have been created. And Wordfence has over 1 million installs now, and rightfully so, because it doesn't matter if you have a simple blog or if you have an e-commerce site that's making hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands a month or a week. You really need to secure your site down, because you don't want it to be used, A, for malicious intent or for people to send out spam email or any of these types of ideas, and B, if you are doing high-end web commerce and you are selling, even if you're only selling a few items, you want to protect your customers' data as well, because a lot of these breaches, people get in and get, mailing addresses and phone numbers and all these types of information. So you want to protect basically your livelihood and your customer data as well. So, on with the show. This is a image of something that happened, it was about 3 weeks ago. This is 2 weeks worth of user data. And you can see here IP addresses of the countries, like how many times they logged in, and that's all well and good, but it really comes down to how many IP addresses were blocked in that particular country. So like 50 here in the US, and India 41, and this is for primecreatorfilms.com. This over and over and over, I think that's Philippines, you got India, and I have no idea what those are. But you can see here, this is why twofold it's important to lock people out that are trying to breach, and also not having default usernames. Like primecreatorfilms.com, 178 login attempts, and obviously none of these users do exist. And this is the default WordPress user, and that is the most dangerous one to keep. It is absolutely critical that you change that from the moment that you log in. There's tons of videos out there on how to do that. If you need help doing that, I do remote control sessions on teaching how to do that, and I can even do it on your behest if you want to watch and learn other types of things. But that is something that needs to go. And when you have a web developer, a lot of times web developers will use a test user, and even when they migrate the website, they don't take the time to change that. So even if they make you a username and password so that you can log in, sometimes the test user stays behind more often than not, and a lot of hackers are using that as an exploit. Now, all these login attempts, are these human beings trying to get into my website? That's a very good question. And the answer is no. Most of these are robots. And what it is, they are minions, computers that have been taken over by viruses. A lot of these viruses that go around, their sole purpose is to give a person somewhere in the world access to these resources so that when they find a website that they want to get into, or some mechanism where somebody browses that website and it's recognized as a WordPress site, and they go and parse it and try to get into it, and it distributes that website all around the world to all these different computers that are infected. And I've seen login attempts, like all of these login attempts, within a 48-hour span from countries I never even heard of. And these can be servers and, personal computers, and any computer that runs an operating system that can be exploited by viruses. And, these can be routers and things that are in data centers. So there's millions of computers installed, billions of computers installed worldwide, and some of these that get infected that are not maintained, or just accidentally got breached, that are running these things, are used to try to get into WordPress and other sites, so that the person that is, employing all these little robots all around the world can use it to send out spam, or to try to get into other systems, use it for transactions, any number of ideas that you want nothing to do with. And they also want to poke around and see if there's any relevant data in the on the WordPress site itself, if there's any information there that might be useful for them. So that is basically the reason why. Now I'll flip over to another site. This is a live site, and this key is like 1,000,000,000 miles long. This is the free that key comes with it. And we will go over to the dashboard on the site. Yay, home. And you can also see IPs blocked from around the world, but more importantly, 175 attempts from India, 88 from Philippines, 71. Don't know what those countries are, 55 and 36. And look at this, over and over and over, what would be a default username for this type of domain without the .com. 235 attempts, test user, 33 attempts, admin, a couple attempts. And somebody tried my full name and my last name, and you can see that those are not existing users, especially the admin user. Always, always, always change that default user. Now you're starting to see why. It'd just be crazy out there. People are trying to get into your business and, use your system for all kinds of crazy mischief. So let's go over the actual Wordfence options. This is primecreatorfilms.com. This is how I have it set up. I'm a bit more on the anal side, so you can kind of scale back, but I'm going to show you all the different options that are in here. So this is enabling entire subsections that are down below, like login security and limiting and advanced blocking, which will go over all the options. Live traffic, where you can see who's literally on your website, and if they're a logged in user, like a customer or an admin user, and their IP address. They might be a robot, or any number of ideas. Some of these advanced features are very, very, very useful. The biggest one to me is the cell phone sign in. And why is that important? Because PayPal, Google, all these companies are using this two-factor authentication. So if you use the cell phone sign in, when you log in through WordPress, besides your username and password, it sends an authentication text to your phone, and you have to go ahead and pop that in to be able to even log in and gain access to your admin panel. So, and I think that is a fantastic mechanism and worth all the money in the world. I also chose Wordfence personally because when I did a cost basis analysis against a lot of the other ones that are out there for the types of services that you get and for the money that you pay for the premium editions and the install base that was out there, Wordfence was one of the better ones that was out there and still is the last time I checked. That is dynamic, obviously, that can change, but I know this has saved my behind on multiple websites for personal ones and for clients. Now, scan on a regular basis, and you're scanning for malware and all these types of things, and it also scans, and there are settings down below that you'll see that you can scan your core files like the WordPress files and plugins and things like that against their repository, like a repository that's safe. Then it basically checks that file against the repository file so that you can see if they match. And yes, that is my email address and one of them. If you need to email me if you have any questions, that one's perfectly fine. So alerts. Now some people, many of my clients go crazy because of all the different alerts that can be generated by this system, and they are quite daunting. However, if you're running a small business, or if you're an attorney, if you have some kind of service, a dentist, and your website is a critical mechanism for intake of clients, it needs to run, and some kind of administration is required, like ordering supplies or getting gas for your car and all these types of ideas. So this is totally up to you what notifications you get. I'm going to show you briefly. Like, I just logged into my websites, and you can see here admin login and the websites that I just logged into. And these are the types of notifications that you get. Just some of the notifications you can get. You can limit how many you get per hour by putting it in here, but like critical problems like a DNS change or things that need to be updated, alert on warnings, the same type of idea. If something is needs an update, like a plugin's out of date, an IP is blocked, like if a user logs in incorrectly too many times or doesn't put a username in correctly, depending on the settings, you get an email on that. And this is how I found out that somebody was trying to log into my website, because WordPress doesn't tell you this. And this is the only way you're going to find out. And maybe if you see many, many, many login attempts in a short time, you may go in and change some settings and like make it harder to get in so that it is not quite as attractive. And that's where these things can be really handy. Now they also a pain in the ass in the management process, because you're going to see them on your phone over and over again and in your inbox. Yes, so there is some balance to be struck there. You, especially for me personally, you want to know when someone's locked out, because that means some shenanigans are going on, or maybe you have a user around the world that's helping edit content, or a contributor that's contributing posts, and they accidentally got locked. Locked out. You can be proactive and text them and fix their username, and and get things done in an expedient manner. So when somebody tries a password recovery attempt, you can get a password. When someone administrator access privileges signs in, you get it. So you might have somebody like working on your website that's helping, like maybe design some web pages around the world, and you can see when they log in, or if they logged in from a different location, if they're shopping it out, which is very useful. Now this gets to be really, really, really cumbersome. Like, for instance, in WooCommerce, customer, there's a WordPress user that's called customer. And let's say you are selling an ebook or a whole bunch of things, and you do like 10, 20 transactions during the day. You can, when they log in to do their purchase, you would see an email if box was checked. So this is one that I don't have checked, because lower level users aren't really concerning me. I love them, and I welcome them. I have them all the time to do online courses and some of the crowdfunding campaign platforms that I have. But this gets to be a little crazy. Email summaries they're basically just that, a summary of like what I showed you over here. You basically get the summary every X amount of time. X you choose here, You're never going to be messing with these types of settings. Yeah, basically the thing that I just showed you, this here, that is enabling that. Live traffic view, you really don't need to mess with any of this. If you have, for instance, some advanced back-end e-commerce stuff that happens where maybe somebody comes in and gathers some information to do some drop shipping from your e-commerce backend, like WooCommerce or something like that. You can put some very particular information in here that they'll likely give you so that you don't have to see them and know that they're logged in because they're not really relevant. Now, this is one of the more important sections besides the next section that we're going to take a look at. This is scanning for known exploits, like Heartbleed which is one of the biggest exploits. And some old plugins and some old themes have this code in there, and it's very exploitable where they don't have to log in and they can just breach and get in and upload a file that allows them access. Now, this basically scans your site for this and will notify you this plugin or this file has this particular security flaw in it. And so all of these types of things are critical to have. Scan for publicly accessible configuration backup. So basically something that doesn't have what's called an htaccess file if it's not protected correctly, if it's misconfigured, if the server is misconfigured from your web host, if the web designer that did your website overlooked something, if somebody breached it and made it so that it's accessible, the next time that's scanned, it's going to tell you and notify you. Scan core files, which is basically what it's saying is WordPress, themes and plugins against their repositories. Absolutely, because if there's a change to WordPress, you want to know about it because that generally means somebody either got into the server or got into your install. Also for themes and plugins, if they change and you haven't done any updates, that means there's some shenanigans going on and you want to address those. So those are very important. And these are like the admin plugins and include folders that are not bundled with WordPress. It's going to scan those as well. So if you have like a Wordfence, add some specialty files when you're doing cell phone sign-ins and other types of things. It's just, it's good practice to scan anything and everything that's on the server. And basically, this is just like an antivirus scanning on your computer, and it's constantly updated. It's updated every time Wordfence is updated, and it's looking for malicious files. So it's scanning, and the same thing, backdoors, Trojans, da-da-da-da-da. Like these are known malicious files. Now, this is very interesting. So let's say somebody does get in, or if you have a link to a website that was perfectly fine and maybe got hacked, and now it's on a dangerous list, like dangerous URLs that has content because they didn't use Wordfence or something like that. Basically, it's going to notify you and say, yo, you have a URL in this particular post that goes to some suspicious content, and we kind of want you to be just aware of that. And the same type of thing for known dangerous URLs and content, blah, 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 blah. And basically comments, people posting a comment to try to get people to go to a URL to a website that actually has some malicious code on it. It's going to look for things that are out of date, like at a certain place, at a certain amount of time, things are considered dangerous, like generally within months, because things get out to date, like out of date themes and things like that. It will just notify you that these things need updating. And that's basically now anything that has updates. If there's a newer version, you're going to get a notification. So anything that's out of date is any plugin, theme, or WordPress version like the WordPress core that has a newer version available, because there's almost always some security fixes in all of those. Now, this can or cannot be necessary. I just check it. Admin users created outside of WordPress, and that can be like an outside e-commerce type of thing. It could be As another example, like when you're doing APIs, like when you're trying to plug in outside services, let's say UPS data and things like that, sometimes those require a special user to be created, and the plugin creates that. It's not created within the WordPress environment like in the normal manner, so that you can get pricing tables and data exchange back and forth. So I just have everything basically scanned. Password strength, absolutely, because nowadays they use password libraries to be able to try to get in. So you need big ass and random ass passwords. This is only applicable under very rare circumstances, and if you're not on a shared hosting package that is monitored by your web host, like if you have a VPS, a dedicated server, there's a couple occasions where you can have this monitor space, but it's kind of rare. This is extremely important, like authorized DNS changes. Those are usually means somebody's has access to has gained access to your register, like a GoDaddy or any number of registers, and they are trying to change your DNS. So they didn't get into your server, but they're changing where your server points to so that they can make the website look however they want and have full access to it because they now have authority over it. So if you ever get notifications of DNS changes, then unless you know you're migrating from one host to the next and you're in the migration process, address those very, very, very quickly. Scan for files outside of WordPress installed. Yes, 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 yes. Why? Well, let's say you have a web developer and he's made a beautiful website for you, and he deployed it and he copied it over, but he had an area that he was using on the server for workspace, and it has some files from his system on there, and you don't know, anybody can be infected, and especially people that do web design and web work. They're no exception to that rule. Not everybody's quite anal enough to keep on top of that stuff. So, or maybe your web host got breached, which has happened to me in the past. It wasn't that they got into my WordPress sites. It was that they got into the like a shared server that had like thousands of domains on it, and one got breached, and they basically put code on all the domains outside the WordPress install, and this basically finds that. So, there's lots of ideas in this as to why that is important. You just want to it's no skin off your back to have that, go and do its business for the small amount of time that it takes for the potential of finding out something that you didn't know. And, if it doesn't find anything, then, everybody's happy and quiet and sleeping well at night. So, I don't do this because you get a lot of false reads. You have to be extraordinarily anal, even more than I am. This does happen from time to time where images have malicious code in them. If you have a site that has and allows users to upload content like a bulletin board or whatnot with images and what have you, sometimes they're not aware that they have a virus, and when they upload images, they piggyback. This, in those occasions, is a very good setting to have. I don't have anything active like that, so I don't really do that type of, I don't really have that one active for that reason, because it does a lot of times give you false reads where it's not, since it's such a thorough scan and there's so much strings of code that it's looking for, that by random happen chance, because of all these combinations that are possible, from time to time it does find a string that looks like a virus and it's not. So, and you can change your sensitivity. You can make it like high so that it's using stronger and stronger and shorter strings of code to look for. Exclude these. These are just basically, files that you don't want anything. I have a backup plugin that doesn't need, any kind of scanning or whatnot, so it's basically excluded. Now these, what's weird is there is, verified crawlers from Google are all good. The one thing that I do is block anyone that breaks like any throttling rules, for the reason that there's this, and it's been going on for like at least 10 to 12 years, is there's robots with the sole intent to hit your domain so many times so that when you look at your reporting, like Google Analytics perhaps, or especially like the server statistics, it shows up as very, very high on the list, and it's a marketing mechanism, and the URL is an advertisement, basically. Like the website is an advertisement trying to get you to go buy SEO services or any number of types of things like security and things like that. And some of those really pound on the server, so I've changed this threshold. Sometimes I play with this, sometimes not. I haven't had any issues. But if I do look through my server reports and I do see something on a client site, then I will enable that. If because sometimes those crawlers I talked about, the ones that are trying to get your attention for marketing, they present themselves as Google crawlers. I don't see that so much nowadays because Google's really cracking down on that crap because they basically not necessarily control the internet, but they have a high hand on it. And this is the most important section, boys and girls, more than anything, is login security, which is really why we're here today. And lock a user out after how many login attempts? So two or two password attempts, whatever combination. Count the number of failures. So like this 2 count is in a 24-hour span for 1 day. And if they do lock themselves out, it is for 60 days, boys and girls, no returns. Now, if it's you accidentally and you don't have a password manager and you're doing things by hand, I suggest 5. If you're having problems with people trying to log in, then 2 is very good. And if you are having problems, this is fantastic, 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 fantastic. However, what ends up happening is if you check this box, like if somebody logs in and it's not a valid user, if it doesn't exist, they instantly are blocked. But if you have like a WooCommerce system or an e-commerce system or digital downloads, if you have a bulletin board or any number of things where you have a lot of users logging in, most people don't get their login attempts correct with all the different passwords they use, and they immediately are locked out and they will lose their mind and you'll have a lot of customer service issues. So you have to watch this depending on how your implementation is. But if it's just little old you or maybe family members or a web designer, then this is perfectly fine and probably even suggested. I find that it makes it so difficult that it is not even fun. They'd rather go somewhere else because it's not personal. They're not wanting, in most occasions, 99% of the time, they don't want in because of you or even the content. They want in because it's a resource that can be exploited and they can use it electronically as an exploited resource. Your WordPress site, it would basically be exploited for whatever their purpose is. And this makes it very, very difficult for them to do that. So you want to balance out how difficult it is for your users and you in comparison to other people that might exploit this resource. So this little checkbox here is a fantastic way to do that, but you just have to kind of watch that it doesn't piss off or make it difficult for other users that might be your bread and butter. Don't let WordPress reveal valid usernames and login errors. Absolutely, positively, because if people do gain access to the error logs, which is sometimes easy to do depending on your server settings, they can see valid users that have had invalid access, and now they have a valid user to try to make login attempts with. And so I like that checkbox personally. And these are 2 exploits that are known. So I just basically have those checked because they are known, and I don't like the admin user, and this is an exploit that's been used to get into WordPress. If you do have a whitelisted IP, you can put it in here. If you don't know your own personal IP address, you can go into Google and type in what is my IP address, and it will tell you. And this just puts it in there so you don't have to worry about it. Immediately block IPs that access these URLs. So like, if you have something that is should absolutely positively and never have anyone try to have direct access to it. This is a very rare type of thing. This is for more of a rarefied type of install. You definitely want to hide your WordPress version because each WordPress version has its own unique exploits, and the knowledge of your WordPress version period is more ability to breach your system. This is kind of like a way to try to freak WordPress out to try to gain entry. It's not so much of an issue anymore, and I don't really have that one checked. I do hold anonymous comments so that I hold all comments for moderation. This is the default that comes with when you install this. And basically, the same types of things. Do you want to check to see if there's malware or something that's known? Check password strength for user profiles, absolutely. And this is really good. Participate in the real-time WordPress security network. This is basically there. So like all these IP addresses that try to pound on my website would be correlated with all these other websites that are, a million websites that are running Wordfence, a million plus. And it basically goes into a database that goes out and gets pushed back so that if they do come to your website, they might not even be able to try to log in. Why? Because they're already blocked, because they've been making attempts. These could be, the people directly trying to get in. These could be the robots that have viruses and whatnot on them, and, just making invalid login attempts. I don't change these defaults unless you really know what you're doing. These can be demands on server resources, and if you're on shared hosting and you start playing with some of these, you can get yourself in trouble. Because if you take up too much in the way of server resources, way over and above what you should, what ends up happening is if you affect the server in an adverse way, you basically get your account temporarily suspended, and you have to talk to what's called terms of service because you breached your terms of service, and they are not in general the nicest people. And they're generally not the people that you really want to have conversations with if you can avoid it. So you need someone that knows how to do this kind of monkey business. That's kind of like a known exploit and something that some plugins have taken advantage of, and I haven't found any issues with that because I don't have users besides admin users that have access to this, so I'm not really generally that worried about that. I like cookies because it keeps track of users and knows when they visit, and for the live statistics and all that. Basically, when you uninstall Wordfence, you can tell it to delete all existence, like that it never even existed. It deletes the information out of the database. And that basically, boys and girls, is a whirlwind tour of Wordfence. Now, let's say you have like a standardized install and you like this, you can actually export and import settings and get information and all your settings, so you don't have to do this over and over and over and over. And you can set it. I set one setting in there, so I'll just save it. And that's what it looks like. Yay, and it saves. So basically, that is Wordfence in a nutshell. Thank you very much for joining me, and I do appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I have links down below that you can, and comments. I'm very proactive in answering comments. This is like my first video that I've done on this channel. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you would like to have a private one-on-one session, there's a link below to go and purchase those. You can do so online, and you have automatic access in my WooCommerce invoice to my online calendar, so you can go ahead and auto schedule yourself on my calendar so we can have our conversation. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.